Today on Everyday Injustice, we are talking with Courtney Teasley. She is a legal disruptor, and I'll ask her about that in a minute. She's also an attorney and DAMM defender and CEO. So, what the heck is a legal disruptor? Because,
Huh.
honestly, I think of us as legal disruptors.
You all are. So, a legal disruptor is literally someone who intervenes, right? Who sees an issue in this criminal justice system, in any kind of legal aspect, and they intercede proactively, right? And so, when I say proactively, I mean prior to someone being found guilty or having pled guilty, right? By plea, we know 97% of people take pleas. And so a legal disruptor is in any capacity like the court watching you all do, right? It's beautiful. That's why I was talking about the investigation. That's proactive. That's legal disruption. When I come to the lawyer realm, I'm talking about how you creatively and innovatively start solving cases, how you fight the cases, right? How you do more than the bare minimum. So that's what a legal disruptor does. They do more than the bare minimum, and they do it proactively to assist what I call the DAM community, and that's DAMM, like you said, disproportionately affected, marginalized minority community. And by the way, thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, and thanks for joining us. I'm really excited about this conversation. So let's start with what is your story and how did you get to this point?
Ha! What is my story? I always get asked that. And so basically, in a nutshell, I am a product of the crack epidemic. Both my mother and father were victims of the crack epidemic. And so I was raised by my grandmother in East Nashville, what I was just telling you and describing as a damn community, right? And so we're definitely disproportionately affected and marginalized. And so growing up in that capacity, I got to see a lot of it from the inside out, especially from the high school I went to. It was considered a high priority high school back then. But I loved it, right? And I love the community. I love the people. And so what I found though, as my mom was trying to get clean, my mom ended up going to jail, and she had crack on her. And so the officer charged her with possession with intent to resell. So he charged her as she was a seller. However, she was a user. And so when she got a lawyer, I believe she got a public defender, and the public defender didn't do much except just plead her out, right? Versus looking a little bit deeper, doing that disruptor work. When you could just look a little deeper, you see, oh, she doesn't even have any of her children. They live with her mom, right? She doesn't have a place to stay. And then you would be able to give her, help her plead to something that is in alignment with what she actually did. And that only makes a difference now in her life when you start to recognize that you get sentenced different when you're a user versus being a seller. If you're a user, it can come off of your record here in Tennessee. If you're a seller, it cannot. Even though, so that kind of sparked me like, oh, okay, this is wild, right? But my mom is resilient, so my mom never had an issue getting jobs. Really good at sales. She does well. However, there are so many who don't. And so I came out from seeing that. I went to law school, and then I came out and opened my own law practice after having worked for another lawyer that had her own law practice. And I saw her being able to fight back without having her hands tied by the state. Like so many people were trying to tell me, go work for the state, go work for the state. And I'm like, I used to work for the state at DHS. I used to do that back in the day. They don't like to pay any money, and they want all blood, sweat, and tears out of you, right? All your hours, all your time. And so I was good to be able to see someone else, what I consider a legal disruptor, fight. And then I came out, opened my own law practice, and started doing the same.
So what does your day look like?
Ha! So, David, that's hilarious. So, David, I have since transitioned from practicing law full time into business coaching full time. So, I coach other lawyers. So, the majority of the time, I am coaching lawyers, helping them build their own law practices. I wrote a book series called The Easy Way to Learn Your Rights. So, I am doing lectures. I did a lecture at American Baptist College called Advocating for the Least of Us: How Churches Can Play a Greater Role in Ending Mass Incarceration. I'm going around. I am going to court on some of the last cases I have. I'm organizing Court Watch. I'm organizing social justice movements. I'm with the National Action Network, NAACP, doing a lot of different things in the community. So my day is usually pretty busy, but the biggest thing is just trying to get the word out about legal literacy and why it is so important for us to take a more proactive stance here.
So what does that look like?
So, being more proactive with legal literacy, I did some market research. I talked to quite a few schools, principals, teachers, and I was like, hey, do y'all teach legal literacy? I taught mock trial back in the day at my high school alma mater. And I was like, I know they don't teach, I know they didn't teach it back then, but like, are we teaching our children anything? Because after having taught criminal justice at the HBCU here in Nashville and then having practiced, and I was like, nobody knows their rights. They don't know anything about this legal stuff. They're, as soon as a cop says anything to them, they're folding. And it's like, what? Wait a minute. You got the right to stay silent. You have the right to lawyer up. So I literally just got to the point where I was like, let me see what's going on. So it looks like people, churches, taking a stance and starting to, in Sunday school, you're teaching legal literacy as well, right? In schools, you have a legal literacy club, right? So it just looks like a grandma, a mom, anyone grabbing a book where I have put a syllabus inside and teaching the one you love and then giving it to them to teach someone else because it is broken down and that simple. That's why it's literally the easy way to learn your rights. So that's what it looks like, just starting.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with the idea of learning your rights because you'd be surprised how many people just give it away at the door.
Immediately parents. Oh, and I mean sometimes it's just because they don't know. And so I talk a lot about that. Like even in the book, I talk about parents don't hinder, your children, because a lot of times growing up in these marginalized communities, we're taught authority. You're taught to respect authority. You're taught to not question it. You're taught to just go along with the flow. If someone tells you to do something, you better do it. You're gonna get your butt beat. And then when a cop comes to you and they're like, hey, tell me ABCDFG, you don't feel like you have the right to say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. It's you're made to feel like you're disrespectful. You're being
Right.
disrespectful. You're doing something wrong. And so that's all I talk over and over. I'm like, it's not disrespect. This is protection. So yeah, legal literacy.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I always train our interns in is the idea that, we have this idea that the police are supposed to be our friends, but
Ah,
the reality is that and you mentioned San Francisco before we got on the air. What I tell my interns in San Francisco is the cops there are really stupid. And I don't mean that to be offensive to anyone. And I understand a lot of them, mean well, but you see them try to testify in court cases
come on now.
and it is shocking. And I have this saying that every wrongful conviction and mass incarceration begins with bad police work.
Ooh, hello. And you are telling the exact truth. And so then I want to just piggyback off what you just said there because you just really lit me up when you said cops are stupid. It's like, I mean, here's the kicker. Let's just be clear. It's a very low bar to become a cop. It's not like you have to go to law school. You don't have to learn any real legal literacy yourself, right? You just kind of go
A
through a
lot of places, they don't even go to college.
don't do anything. So it's just like, hey, you're a cop now. And so then it becomes important to realize that, and you know this more than anyone, right? The criminal justice system is built solely upon probable cause. And that probable cause is determined by who? Someone who has had no training, someone who maybe didn't even go to school, right? Someone who has a lot of biases. And so then we get into how mass incarceration occurs, right? Because it's so easy, given that they only had to determine that you probably did something. And then when you went to court, they had to determine that you probably did it to keep you moving along in that system. And then 97% of people are going to fizzle out and be nervous to have that beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is why I'm
Yes.
doing the work I do, David. This is why you do the work
Yes.
you do.
Exactly. And you're speaking my language here because that 97% figure, which is the same one I cite, is why I tell the interns that it's so important to do bail hearings and do
Yes.
preliminary hearings because
Yes.
most cases don't get to trial. Now, what's really interesting, I just did an interview with a San Francisco public defender. The San Francisco public defenders are a little different than in most places. Like they will try to take everything to trial.
Oh,
And so, like,
oh, come on
they
now.
were showing me like their data in the misdemeanor unit. They've had a 50% increase in the caseload in the last year. So from August 2024 to August 2025, it's increased 50%.
Wow.
The cases that went to trial, I think they said like 80, and 42 of them resulted in acquittals. Now think about
Wow.
that. Like,
Wow.
but I will tell you this, okay? Like, public defenders get a bad rap. The
Yeah.
San Francisco public defenders are the best attorneys I've ever seen. Like that is
Yes.
world class.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the rest of the world, and there are other good public defender offices. If
Yeah.
anyone's listening,
For
I'm not
sure. For sure.
trying to put anyone specifically down. I'm just saying San Francisco is exceptionally good. But you get these public defender offices and they try really hard, but then they're representing 100 clients, 200
Yep.
clients. And how can you do a good job if you're representing that many clients?
Yes. Yes. I totally agree with you. And then think about it. Even when we're thinking about the majority of people who get a public defender, you have to be making under the poverty line, which is what,
Mm-hmm.
$30,000 or something. It's not that much money, especially if you live in San Fran, right? Or
Yep.
Nashville. And so you're going to have court appointed lawyers. So you're going to have lawyers that are taking money from the state to represent these people, different things of that nature. And so they are in the same boat as well, representing a bulk of people who they're just cycling them in, cycling them out. And no, you are not able to be as effective when you have that many cases. You're just not. And so that was something that as a private attorney, we always talked about. I'm a member of the Tennessee Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers here, a member of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. All we talk about as a young lawyer is look, you may think, you may not have a lot, but you have more time than they have, right? We're talking about the district attorneys. They're busy. They're having to work on a lot of cases. They have a lot more resources than we do, public defenders as well. However, if you as a private lawyer, right, are gonna go in, you have the odds are in your favor if you do the work. And that is why legal literacy being taught to others, because like you said, maybe they don't have the option to have a public defender. Don't have the option to have a private attorney. They get a
Right.
public defender somewhere in another part of the world who doesn't even know what they're doing. Well, you need to know at the bare minimum what needs to be done in your case. You
Well,
need
in a
to know.
lot of cases, the public defenders are the best attorneys to have because they're in court all the time. They know the judges, they know the system. And so, like, most of the cases that I cover that are wrongful convictions were not public defender cases. They were people that thought they were in better shape to mortgage their house and hire a private attorney, and then they end up screwed.
Yeah, that obviously happens. There are bad lawyers regardless, right? I always talk about defense lawyers being like, think about it, your last line of defense. If your last line of defense is working for the other side, doing the bare minimum, then there's absolutely no way mass incarceration can end. So I totally
Right.
agree with you. I think that there are great public defenders, but I think that sometimes we get caught up solely focusing on public defenders, like for instance thinking that maybe the bulk of people who are in the criminal justice system even qualify for one. I would disagree. I would say that there are abundance more people, right, who do not qualify for a public defender. And then my thought process then goes to this: when we sit here and we can't only look at what the wrongful convictions are, right? We like, and I feel like you all had something. It was a couple years ago when I was in NAACP Legal Redress. I was researching. We were trying to look for a way for more prosecutorial transparency and looking at how they give out pleas and why in the different ways. And I think some investigation had been done in that, or they were doing, and we really wanted to hear it done in Nashville. But our DA here is like absolutely just he blocks anything. You know, it's like more of a fake progressive. He just doesn't do anything that's actually progressive. But
Mm.
I think that you having something where we can go in and see what kind of deals are being offered, right? To who? Why? Right? What was their lineup? How do they look compared to this person over here? How do your DAs give out deals? I think that's something that's worth definitely looking into as well.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you talk about disrupting mass incarceration, and I think your description earlier was perfect because, mass incarceration is almost like an assembly line, right?
Yes.
Like you get into the system and it rolls along until you plead out, and then, you know, and then you're kind of stuck in the system, and,
Yes.
and and this is where I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, if you take a plea agreement,
Yes.
it it seems like a good idea, especially if your exposure is 20 years or something,
Exactly.
and you get diversion. But a lot of people, they're housing insecure, and they're trying to stay in the job market, and it's really hard to do everything
Right.
that they're being asked to do, and then we make it impossible for them to get back on their feet. So you take a plea and you end up not being able to get public housing, you end up not being able to get educational loans, you end up not being able to get a job because it's on your record. And even in California, where we banned the box, we haven't banned the
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah.
So so I mean, and
Uh,
we deal with this all the time. And the cool thing is, at least out here, we're starting to understand that, if we just turn people loose, then they're going to end up right back in court, tomorrow.
yes.
And so, at least prisons are starting to do some programming and education, and at least getting people GEDs. I shock people. You're around the corner from St. Louis, but there was a stat there that just blew me away.
Mhm.
St. Louis has long had the highest murder rate in the country,
Oh
and
wow.
every single person that was charged with a murder, and every single person that was murdered, didn't have a high school degree.
Mm,
Now think about that stat. What does
mm.
that tell you?
Every single person charged with a murder didn't have a high school degree.
Correct.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, doesn't that blow your mind?
No, it absolutely blows your mind, right?
Like,
Like,
you
absolutely.
want to disrupt, educate people.
Yeah. And then, and then that sounds easy, except when you're in a place like Tennessee where
Right?
we have struggled to get funds at
Yeah.
all for education. We literally deal with some of the worst in the country. And so I totally agree to you. Like everything that we're talking about, sometimes it feels like, preaching to the choir because it's
Right.
like clearly we know. The problem is nobody else, either they know and they just don't care, or they don't know, right? And they don't care. So,
Well, and that's my job. My
yeah,
job is to educate people in the public realm about what the realities of this system are, and
absolutely.
that's how I view my role as a disruptor. Whether
Yes.
it's getting on the ground in the courts because nobody sees what's going on in the courts, or being able to have these kinds of conversations and have people that normally would not be able to talk to people like you or me listen to our conversation, and at least start to think about things a little bit differently, I hope.
Yes, I agree. That's all you can do, and it's so beautiful because you got to keep showing up consistently, regardless if you know whether it's helping or not.
Yeah.
Keep on doing it.
And sometimes I feel like I'm banging my head against the
Yeah,
wall, but I'm sure you
same.
do too.
Same. I do, David. I really do. But this podcast, like journey I've been on, meeting with so many people like that, I'm just meeting across the country I didn't previously know existed that cared. And so
Yeah.
it helps me be renewed, and it helps me know, like, oh no, there's a pathway here. We just all have to, reach our hand out and connect to one another. Right. So I'm excited for that.
So, what do you see as kind of the most important thing that you can do?
Ha. I love that you say that. I feel like I empower people to not feel like they have to be a lawyer, right? I really empower people to get into this fight and know that you don't have to be a lawyer. Every lawyer is not an advocate, and every advocate is not a lawyer. My call to you is to be what I call a damn advocate, disproportionately affected, marginalized minority advocate. Get out here, and that's what we do. We train in that. We created frameworks around that because we fought a case out here outside of Nashville in a smaller town, Manchester, and they had taken five black children and forced them into foster care all over a small amount of marijuana. Now, let that sink in, guys, because I come to San Fran and oh, do I have fun? Do I enjoy myself? Right. Do we all? However, in other parts of the world, people are being punished for even having a small amount of that, to the point of they're taking their children